Yeah. So we're still in I kind of call it my series of This is the Bible series. And so we're going to go to maybe what you might even believe is even more basic than what we've already talked about. And that is in Exodus chapter 20. If you have a Bible, if you don't, there's one in front of you someplace. And we're going to begin to talk about the 10 Commandments. Now, before we get into this, sometimes I believe over history God's got a bad rap. We think that there's a God sitting up there telling us what to do all the time. That we have all these rules and regulations that we have to follow. But can I tell you today and reassure you that that's not his intent? That the rules he gives us are blueprints for a good life. I think it's interesting, years way back, especially when I was before I was a Christian, trying to read the Bible and reading all of the rules and regulations in Exodus and Deuteronomy and Leviticus, about any time you touch somebody else's body fluids or something, you have to go through this cleansing and go through 7 days, all this kind of stuff. Well, it's interesting because we just came through a time when if you got too close to certain people, what were you supposed to do? You were supposed to wash your hands and stay away from them for certain. Yeah, and when I realized that all of these rules, that we call rules, were just things to help us have a good life. God, they didn't know about viruses and bacteria, but God did. And so that's why he said, wash your hands. You had regular ritualistic washing of hands. And I just want to ask parents right now, how many of you would like to see your kids be a little more ritualistic on washing their hands? Even adults. I was impressed. The last time I went to camp, kids camp, Isaiah came up with his toothbrush and his plaque rinse and all this kind of stuff, and he set a timer. Anybody set a timer to brush your teeth and do mouthwash? What's the matter with you anyway?
That's a mom thing.
Yeah. And so it is ritualistic. But again, I don't know, we're like children sometimes. Whoever wanted to hear their mom say, pick up your room? Nobody wanted to clean up their room.
Just shove everything under the bed.
Yeah, but why? You don't step on your toys. You don't break them as much. You don't make Dad mad from stepping on your Legos.
Nobody's ever done that, right?
We had Lincoln logs.
Yeah, we had Lincoln logs, yep. And they didn't hurt near as much as these Legos, let me tell you.
I don't know what you're talking about. You're not sure.
I have to tell you a story on me about picking up my room. When I was younger, I had to share the room with my younger sister, who was 4 years younger, because we had lots of kids and only so many bedrooms. And, of course, every Saturday would come around, and the room was just covered with toys and things like that, because Mom really didn't like us to bring toys downstairs to play with. And so we played in our room. And just about every Saturday, Mom would come up. This room needs to be picked up right now. And so my sister Julie and I, we would kind of get started, but then pretty soon we'd see something we hadn't played with all week long. So then we'd start playing with it, right? Well, then Mom would come up, and again, you'd have to know my mom. And she says, you have 15 minutes to pick up this room, or I'm coming up with the ping pong paddle. Yeah, we had 2 sets of ping pong paddles. You couldn't hide them enough. And then all of a sudden, my sister got all excited. Oh no, we got to get this picked up. And I laid down on the bed. And she says, we only got 15 minutes to clean this room. I said, you better hurry, didn't you? I was a little more accustomed to the ping pong paddle than she was. So just a little bit about rules that we think, that we kind of buck up against. And so we need to realize that the 10 Commandments, or all of these commandments that are that of course we can say, well, we don't live under the law. No, we don't live under the law. But we also know that this is God's heart, don't we? That's what we learn. That's what I want to encourage you to come on Wednesdays, even though we're in the Old Testament. We still learn God's heart. God's heart. And I believe the 10 Commandments are the very bedrock of how He wants us to live our lives. The blueprint for righteous living. So we're going to start out and look at the first 4 commandments, because the first 4 commandments have to do with our relationship with God. And so we start in Exodus 20. And starting in verse 1, it says, and God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol in the form of anything in heaven above or on the earth. I got ahead of myself. Let's just stick with number 3 for right now. You shall have no other gods before me. Now that might seem kind of simple. But with all the noise we live with nowadays, all of the influences, all of the things, I got to do this, I got to have that, I got to go here, I got to experience this. You have all kinds of things that are calling you to things that you think are important. But we need to understand that God needs to be over the whole thing. And you think, and you say, well, I think I do that. But the one true test is when it comes to true love and attention, is there something that takes precedence over God? Thank you. That's always a good way to find out what's the most important. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? So the next one, I think is kind of, I almost would have would have called it Commandment 1B myself, but we call it Commandment number 2, and that is, of course, verse 4, you shall not make for yourself an idol in the form of anything in heaven above or on the earth beneath or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the fathers to the third and fourth generation, to those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. And of course, I've mentioned this many times, that my family is in this generational blessing. It started, I would love to be able to say I started it, but I'm just a grateful receiver of it. This started many generations before me. That we put God first. We loved God before everything else. And I still believe in all the sayings and some of the songs and all this type of thing that says the best way to show love is with time. How much time do you spend with the Father? I believe that will show that will also, I mean, it's like any relationship. The more time you spend, the more the love is, I don't know, relevance not the word, but it's just stronger. And, and in a way I feel bad, but yet I understand it. It's, just recently I was with my family, with my sisters and things like that. And, I only see them once or twice a year, if that. And even though they're blood family, and I love them, they're still strangers to me. And that's the thing. I feel you all are more family to me than they are, because I spend more time with you. And that I think that's a good way to see about God. I mean, if we're feeling distant from the Father, if we're feeling distant from Jesus, it might just be because we're not spending enough time with Jesus. The men's group is gearing up. We're studying on fasting. We've been on fasting the last 2 studies, and we've kind of agreed. We believe the Lord is leading us into a group fast, and I'm kind of excited about that, because again, the beautiful thing about fasting is that it just, I don't want to say forces you, but it provides opportunity to have more time with Jesus. More time to read, more time to pray, more time to just be in His presence. And again, more time equals more love and devotion, more understanding, more of just knowing who I am, who He is. As we go on with this, verse 7, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses His name. Seems pretty black and white to me. But hold your finger here and go over to Matthew chapter 12. And we're going to go all the way to start in verse 33. Matthew 12:33. Make a tree good and its fruit will be good, or make a tree bad and its fruit will be bad. For a tree is recognized by its fruit. You brood of vipers, how can you who are evil say anything good? Listen to this. For out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. I remember I was serving with an older pastor, and I was sitting there, and I was kind of new to pastoring, and he was visiting with another man, and the man says, I just really have a problem with my mouth. And he says, no, you have a problem with your heart. Because out of the mouth comes the overflow from the heart. So if you want to change your mouth, you change your heart. It's kind of, I know Bev and I tease each other, but I could probably promise you, you will never hear me say anything evil or bad about my Bev, because I just love her that much. As a matter of fact, and I've shared this many times, before we got married, we made an agreement that we will not call each other a name in anger for any reason at any time. That's the thing. Once words are out, you can't shove them back in again. And as God is my testimony, and you can ask Bev too, 47 and a half years, we have never, ever, ever, ever called each other a name in anger at any time. Because the overflow of my heart is for her very best interest and for our relationship. And so if we have that same relationship, that same goal with our God, I mean, yeah, my wife spent time with me. She's given me children and all kinds of other stuff that married folks do. But God created me. God saved my soul. And He's building me a mansion in eternity. So I think He's probably due as much or more, right, of an understanding on this. And so, and again, and I have to tell you, I've worked with professional people that use bad language. And I think how ridiculous that is. A professional person. How do they know who they're talking? How do they know who they're talking to, whether they're offending them or whatever? And we just recently changed doctors because our doctor had a terrible mouth. I don't understand that. I mean, if you want to go home and talk like that in the mirror, that's your business. But I don't think you have the right to say that, talk like that in my presence. Now, I can say that. Before I was saved, I was that guy. I had a different view of it then. But I didn't know God like I know God now. I don't love him. I didn't love him like I love him now. I'm not as appreciative of him as I am now. I think we've given that horse enough spur. Verse 8, Exodus 28. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your manservant or maidservant, nor your animals, nor the alien within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Now, before we get into this discussion, I also want, keep your hand there, go to Mark chapter 2. And we're going to find verse 23. Mark 2, let's see. Oh, I'm sorry, 27. 2:27. Then he said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. Now I throw that in there for us wants to understand that as God is saying, hey, you need a day out of the week to rest. Because I mean, I always kind of labeled myself a pretty good-natured guy. But have me work 7, 8, 9, 10 days in a row, and you probably won't want to be around me much. We need a day to rest. We need a day to recoup. And as Jesus put, this was put in for our benefit. God's not saying, well, I want one day for myself. I want you to sit your butt in that chair and listen to me at least one day a week. I don't know, you might be thinking that, I don't know. But it's for us. It's for our own good. It's our own health. Especially in our society, we don't rest enough or rest properly.
Going to another job, isn't it resting from the other job?
Huh?
Is it going to your second job, isn't resting from the
No. Go into this. Your second job is not resting from the first job. I know. I've done that most of my adult life. It doesn't work very well. Huh?
Do children count as a job?
Yeah. Well, if I said no, I would be in big trouble. It's kind of course, being grandparents now. And, you know, you always joke about, oh, it's nice being grandparents because you can send them home at night. Yeah. Well, when they actually have to spend the night, that kind of changes the whole dynamic.
Oh, come on, we're fun to be around.
It's like, I'm pure joy. What are you doing?
Oh, pure joy. Yes. We count it pure joy.
And then they never
But the thing is, doesn't things flow a lot? I don't care whether it's relationships, even if it's something that you enjoy doing. Isn't having proper rest, doesn't that help the whole thing? Helps the attitude, absolutely helps the attitude.
Wyoming has so many shift workers, so
Yeah,
Sunday is not it's a regular scheduled day.
yeah.
So I guess they could take another day off.
Well, I do think, yeah, and again, that's why I brought in this verse that Jesus said that the Sabbath is made for man, not man for the Sabbath. It's made to remind us we need to rest. Now again, he also said, if your donkey falls in a pit on the Sabbath, get it out. I mean, it's just a common sense thing. If you're on shift work and they have you on what we think of as a Sabbath, as our Sunday, you're not, unless it's prearranged. I've been fortunate enough that every job that I've ever had, I told them, I don't work Sundays. I have more important things that I'm doing on Sunday, and Wednesdays. If I'm someplace where we're having services on Wednesday, I said I don't do Wednesdays. And again, if you can create enough favor with your employer that you can do that, but again, you can't. You have to create that.
Did they ever ask you, well, what days do you work then?
Yeah. But anyway, so I had a great wise thing to say, and then it just left me. But anyway, I'm sure it'll come to me later, this afternoon. So I will, yeah.
Send a math test.
Yeah, Kate.
Isn't there something about, in the New Testament, we are not beholden to all the laws of Moses? Isn't there something about that? Like, because they had like 400 or something on
Yeah.
specific rules that we don't necessarily have to abide by?
Okay, here's the difference. Here's the dividing thing. The question was that she's mentioning how the New Testament says that we're not under the law, which Paul has said several times. John tells us that. But again, the thing about the law is we know this is God's heart. And the difference is when he says we're not under the law, it's because we don't have to be held for the punishment of breaking the law, because Jesus' sacrifice, the grace that we experience through his sacrifice, covers the punishment.
But you can still act in the spirit of the law.
Exactly, we have to.
Yes.
We have to. And that's why I push it a lot. That's why we talk about it a lot, so that again, we know God's expectations of us. Yeah, praise God, when I break a law, I don't have to go to the synagogue and be punished for it. Yeah, penitence or something like that.
Well, it's more like natural consequences now. Like, most of the laws are like, if you do this, this is just naturally what happens. He's just kind of you're not gonna duck when you go underneath that big post. You're gonna have a headache.
Yeah,
They're natural.
there are natural consequences.
But yeah, we aren't gonna go to hell because we didn't follow the
Yeah,
rules now.
yeah,
But we do reap what we sow.
yeah. And if you know someone who's in the middle of COVID, it's not real smart to go kiss them on the mouth. There's natural consequences to these things. And that's what, when I bring up these rules and laws, that's the position I'm coming from. So anyway, the first four are about our relationship with God. And the last 6 are about our relationships with each other. With each other. So, as we continue, Exodus 20, verse 12. Are you listening, Jay? Because we have so much fun when you're over at the house. Yeah. Honor your father and mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. You know that?
Yeah, I heard that.
I just seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got that, Wade? Yeah. Okay.
I don't think so. I think you might need to repeat that.
Uh, is Michael, did you hear that? Okay. I guess I should also say, Carrie, did you hear that?
Just ask everyone in the room.
So, yeah, we joke about it. Because isn't it sad it's almost an oddity anymore to have children that honor their parents? Isn't that sad today?
Parents want to be friends instead of parents.
And I also want to throw this in because so many times we believe that honor automatically means obey. And, you hate to bring that up with kids in the room,
The walls have ears.
but we tell the truth here, right? To honor your parents just means not to disrespect them. And if you decide not to walk the same path that they walk, it wasn't too long ago, I reminded a teenager, you are not your dad, you are not your mom. And it's not the first teenager I've reminded him of that. And every male child that's been in my family, I've told them, you don't have to be just like your papa. You'd be smart, but anyway. No, take all of the men of influence in your life. Even have got people here in the room. Yeah, like take for example, Wade. Yeah, I'm his grandpa. But he looks at how I do things, how I talk, how I act. He can look at how his dad talks and acts, which is a lot like me. And other people that he knows. Especially here in Fuzzy. They can see how Fuzzy reacts to things. Take men that you know that have some kind of influence in your life and take out the best part that you know, that you can see. Be that man. Decide to be that man. You don't have to be exactly like somebody else, but make a decision of what kind of man you're going to be. I got off the honoring the parent thing, but it is important. It is important. It wasn't that long ago. Well, the other week, I drove all the way to Lansing, Kansas, because my mom's 93, and about every 2 weeks I get this, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be around. And so to honor her, we went to visit her. Doesn't necessarily mean that I do everything like she does or say everything she does or anything like that. And but I love her and I honor her. I am so fortunate that she is my mother. Now here's one that's actually kind of interesting the more you get into it. Short, verse 13. You shall not murder. You shall not murder. Now, if your version says you shall not kill, it's incorrect. Because that's not the way the language in its original form makes it. You know, in the Bible, there's actually 3 forms of taking a life. One is murder, one is kill, and the other is slaughter. And so, take for example, when they're talking about killing a lamb, like the sacrifice, or killing something to eat, the Bible may say kill, but in the actual word, it's slaughter. It's not kill. It's not kill. And it's certainly not murder. It's certainly not murder. And also especially in the Old Testament, when we've got these great heroes like David and that are out killing the giant, it's kill, not murder. That's why when our people are defending our country or defending democracy, and they have to kill someone, that is not murder. That is not murder. And I know that it creates quite a political whirlpool, but even capital punishment. In the Old Testament, God instituted capital punishment. And it does not come under the heading of murder. Self-defense does not come under the heading of murder. What comes under the heading of murder is if you preconceive and decide to kill someone for your own selfish reasons. That is murder. That is murder. And so that's the difference. That's the difference. And I believe that it's important for us to understand these things. And I understand, obviously nobody wants to kill for any reason. Unfortunately, life gets us in situations that puts us in that position. I never have been in that position. I'm glad I haven't. But it's important for us as God's people to understand, because that way we're not condemning. We're not saying, oh, God's going to punish you for this somehow or another, which is a whole Old Testament thing. The New Testament says that God disciplines us. And of course, so many times we've used the word discipline as a parallel of punish, but in the Bible, that's not what that means. Discipline means to teach. That's where we get the word disciple from. Is to teach. And sometimes we use punishment as a form to teach. And they say, don't do that again. Let's go down a little bit further. Another nice little short one here. You shall not commit adultery. That's why we make commitments before God and before others. And to say, until death do us part. Now, I'm I don't mean, I know many of us have experienced that it didn't work that way. I'm sorry for that. But God's plan is once and done. Once and done. And I think it's important for us, and even those that maybe it didn't work out that way, to be able to maybe even more share that truth with others. Because you all know things that I don't know. The hurt, the pain, the baggage. Believe me, at 19, you still bring a bunch of baggage into a relationship. I think about nowadays, they say our average marriage time is getting older and older. I forget, I've heard 25 once and 28 once was the average age now of people getting married. And however it works out, but even then, you bring a lot of baggage into a relationship. Let's go on down just a little bit. I got a few minutes yet. You shall not steal. You don't take something that's not yours. You don't take something that you haven't earned. And I know, and I bring this up because I'm not completely innocent of this myself. Because so many of us says, I've never stolen everything. But again, I've mentioned this before. If you've goofed off on the time clock, you've stolen the man's money because you didn't earn it. You've taken the man's money and didn't earn it. So see how that's why Romans says, for we've all fallen short of the glory of God. We've all fallen short. Verse 16, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. Now, my understanding, in their culture, they kind of saw this a little differently, just simply because they had the laws there. There would actually be situations where you could bring something up against your neighbor and be taken to court, and then they could be taken to court and convicted, and then their land comes up. And so if I was living next door to Rosa and I needed more land, I could maybe accuse her of something in court. And if I could get the judge to believe it and she got taken to court, then I would have an option to get her land. But we know that it's even bigger than that. And it's just about being honest. It's about not lying to or about your friends, about your family, about the guy that lives next to you. The guy that lives next to you. And here's the thing. You know, the little caption. It says, truthfulness is essential for trust in relationships. And this commandment urges us to be honest in words and actions. You know, the difference of being known as an honest person and a person that you don't know whether they're going to be honest or not. It's important for us as we go through this world for people to know we're honest. People to know we're honest. And I think it's, all right, I'm going to step out in some real mucky area right now, Dee. I'm going to step out in some real mucky area. Facebook. I have realized that people will say anything on Facebook that they won't say to your face. Instagram, TikTok.
Snapchat.
You know, man. And can I tell you again, my heart breaks because sometimes I read things. Well, Bev tells me because I don't do Facebook, I don't do TikTok, I don't do none of that stuff. But Bev will be thumbing through, and she will read something from somebody we know, and she said, "Can you believe they put that on Facebook?"
It's even the text messages, though. If you're not actually having a conversation with someone, and you can just text them, and there's no emotion, there's no thought.
Yes.
It's not, we've gotten to a point where we just hide behind the texting.
Yes.
It's very hurting to just stop.
And I even mentioned that to Bev because she'll read me a text with emotion, and I said, "How do you know that's the emotion behind that text?" You know?
The same words can mean
Yeah.
different tones, can mean totally different things.
I mean, there's a difference between "I won't be there" or "I won't be there." Same words. And so words are important, aren't they? Words are important. And again, it's maybe the words we're saying are not dishonest, but it's sure leading us in understandings that maybe are true, aren't true. Actually, maybe what people are saying to your face is what's not true. Because then the passive-aggressive form of these messages might be more of the truth than when they talk to your face. I think we should be the same person all the time. In verse 17, you shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife or his manservant or maidservant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Covet is another word that is a word that we have to understand rather than just take it at face value. Covet means covet is not just wanting something really bad. And I remember growing up with a saying, and we used it kind of as a compliment. We'd say, "I wish I had that and you had one better." But, take for example here, and I don't know who they are. Somebody has a black Camaro with a red stripe. I would love to have that car. Coveting is, I have to have that car, no matter what. I mean, I can desire that car. I can just desire a car that's like that. But coveting is, I want that car, none other, and I will do whatever it takes to get that car. That's coveting.
They don't deserve it, but I do.
Huh? Yeah. It's like somehow or another, I deserve it. So I need that car. Now, would I argue if I actually got that particular car? No. but I'm not going to steal or cheat or do something because, by golly, I'm going to have that car. And that's coveting. That's coveting. But that's the thing is, you know, again, the little comment, contentment with God's blessings. See, coveting does away with contentment. And the Bible really wants us to be content. And content, again, is another word. Sometimes we think, well, you know, where does advancement come in? Where does just wanting to make a little more money or something? Contentment doesn't do away with that. Contentment is, you know, when I go to bed at night, if this is what I got, this is what I got. That doesn't mean the next morning you're going to go up and try a little harder. Or maybe even just be content with the road that you're traveling. But contentment with God's blessing leads to inner peace and gratitude and prevent envy and resentment. Coveting can lead to resentment. Because I know I'm a better person than that person that owns that car. And so I ought to have that car. I don't know why God gave that person that car and not me. So, we went through the 10, and I hope maybe we have a little more understanding than just some rules. Just some rules. See, that's another thing about the rules is God's what we might call the law or the rules that he gave us are a lot like the rules that he gave Adam and Eve in the garden. You can eat from all of the trees in the garden except for one. Don't eat from that tree. Now, let me ask you, now that we've seen history and we've got the Bible and all, was it a good idea to eat from the tree? It was not a good idea to eat from the tree. But they thought that they needed to do that. And that's the things with the commandments. You know, it says, you know, don't be dishonest. Well, gosh, think of all the truthful things you can say. You know? I mean, yeah, that's the thing. We read all the negative into these rules. And it's not about the rule. It's about keeping us out of trouble.
Freedom.
There is freedom within boundaries. That's the way God wants us. We have freedom as long as we're in boundaries. Real quick, it was kind of interesting. I thought about it when we had our property out at Douglas, and we had 3 horses out there, and the grass out. Of course, here in Wyoming, grass don't last long. We only had 20 acres. We had 3 horses, so the grass didn't last very long. And so I thought I'd just I closed the gates on the driveway, and I was just going to let them out into the yard because about had another 2 acres of yard. And so I opened the gate, and it was so funny. They come shooting out of that gate like they were escaping. And for 15 minutes, just run round and round and round out in the yard. They didn't know what to do because they were out of the boundaries. And I think sometimes we're that way. We want out of the boundaries. But then we get out of the gate and we're, yeah, now what am I going to do? I have no guidance, you know? So anyway, I think I'm done. I think I'm done. Lola's about ready to go to sleep on me. All right. Jesus, thank you so much for your rules that help us to help us understand your heart and how you want us to live. And to be able to live with you, God, and to live with each other in peace and harmony. So, Lord, we thank you so much. And I pray, Lord, that if there's any wrinkles or holes in this message, Lord, that you will fill them in with your power and your love. And we just want to give you the praise for it. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you, folks.